To North America Bureau Chief David Lipson in Washington now. David, what sort of police presence, National Guard presence, Homeland Security presence can you see out there now?
Well, it's a huge presence by those authorities that are trying to maintain order here, and just as an indication, as quickly as that big crowd arrived here, they've now moved on and they've moved on. So, look, as I was saying, the large group of protesters that moved here into this spot and confronted verbally, peacefully, if you like, the row of riot shields there, they've moved off. They've gone swarming into greater downtown Washington, D.C. So we don't know if this is what's going to happen through the night, but there is a huge police and other agency presence here, because it's not just police. It's also the National Guard. There's actually a military helicopter flying overhead with troops hanging out the side of it. That's what's going over the top of Washington, D.C. right now. These police officers here these are not police officers here. They are from the Department of Homeland Security, and they've donned riot gear. So all sorts of agencies have been called in to try to maintain order. As we heard from the President, he's prepared to go much further and actually call in the military proper. Right now it's just the National Guard, which is a bit like the American version of the Army Reserve, but he may put full-time troops on the streets as well.
So there is a real sense there that tonight could be the line in the sand, if you like. This is the night where it stops?
Well, it's hard to know, isn't it? You could have said that any night of the past 6 or 7 nights. It just seems to have escalated each night. But it's important to note it's not the same in every city. So obviously a lot of emotion here. A lot of people
see a camera and they see an opportunity. Absolutely.
It's been a week of fury, but it still hasn't, quelled the anger. And perhaps until there is some meaningful action or a conviction and the jailing of the officers involved, this may just continue. And
then we had that autopsy which came back. Independent autopsy on George Floyd, saying that the 46-year-old had died of mechanical asphyxiation, calling the death a homicide, which I think directly contradicted the official autopsy that was conducted on him, which can only inflame the situation.
Well, yes, there's been a few contradictions. The first one was the police statement on the night of the death of George Floyd, where there was no mention made of the fact a police officer had any sort of interaction with him. They said initially that there was a man who was under the influence who suffered some sort of medical problem and ended up dying. So that was the initial statement that came out from Minneapolis police. When that video was released and went viral, the anger erupted, and then we've seen other attempts or other pieces of information that have made people angry as well, and that issue of the autopsy, or the two different autopsies, one by the officials of the state that suggested that there was no asphyxiation, or if you like, a form of kind of strangulation, whereas this one today that's come out, an independent autopsy, has found something very, very different, that in fact it was the knee of that police officer that caused George Floyd's death.
And just those remarkable scenes of the President leaving the White House. I think there was just very short notice ahead of him making that speech where he said that the National Guard would be deployed, and then suddenly the streets were cleared and he was out walking the streets of Washington, D.C. Nobody expected that.
And no one here knew what was going on. That was what was quite extraordinary as well. None of the protesters knew that the President was right around that corner, walking in the streets, casually chatting to the Reverend and the rector of that church that was set ablaze last night. So pretty extraordinary scenes here, and an attempt by the President, it seems, to project an image of strength and calm, when on this side of the barricades, as we just saw with that large group of protesters swarm through, there's still a whole lot of disorder, and it may get worse as the night goes on.
Sure. Well, night is falling. David Lipson, we'll leave it for now. We'll go back to you very soon to get the latest update from what's going on in Washington, D.C.